Welcome back to Youthful Voices. I'm Elijah Coles Brown.
I'm Christian Bolar.
And this is another episode of Youthful Voices. Christian, man, it's so good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
How you been doing? How's this week been going for you?
This week's been going great, doing good in school, getting good grades. How about you?
I've been doing great, but the thing is, we've only been doing this for this is our third week now, but I already feel so natural. I feel like we're just talking to like a family, like we're talking to some of the friends at home, right? And it's a really great opportunity to be able to do this.
Yes.
But basically, I want to start by saying that what everyone just heard in the intro, was Christian's new song. And his song is called Speak It, I believe.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that song, Christian?
The song Speak It is coming out this Friday, September the 28th. Make sure to go download it on all digital platforms. The song talks about speaking things into existence. And the song is it's an upbeat and positive song. And I pray that you'll enjoy it. So, yes.
Wow. And you said, one more time. Can you repeat when and where they can get that song? Because I want everyone to be listening, because I need you to go get that song. It's such an inspirational message for all people of any demographic. So just tell us one more time.
Again, the song comes out this Friday, September the 28th, and you can download it on all digital platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, any music device, SoundCloud, any music device that you have on your phone, you can download it on there. So make sure to go check it out.
That's awesome, and thank you for telling us about that, Christian.
Can you tell us about, I hear that you're going to be on Richmond Family Magazine. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So basically, I'm have the honor to be featured on Richmond Family Magazine, and I'm going to be featured on the cover as well. And the thing about Richmond Family Magazine and what I talked about, I talk about a lot of issues that are concerning some of the communities around the nation, especially the Richmond community. But I talked about the issue of education and social justice, volunteering, entrepreneurship, a lot of issues that are affecting not only young people, but people that are older as well. So the thing is about this magazine, and I love how this magazine does their work, but it's free, and you can get it all around the Richmond metro area. So I want to make sure that everyone who is watching this show come and get a copy this Friday. It's coming out this Friday. Come and get a copy of the Richmond Family Magazine, and because I'm gonna be talking about a lot of issues and a lot of topics that I think that many young people and older people want to hear about. But in being featured in Richmond Magazine makes me realize that I've come a long way. I have come so far in my journey, but the thing is, I have to thank God for everything that He's done for me. Because if it weren't for God, if it weren't for my mom, who is sitting right here, if it weren't for those people, I would not be able to be talking to you on Youthful Voices. I would not be able to sit next to you, Christian. And I have to give God and my mom the credit that they both deserve, because I'm a product of a single mom. And I understand that she makes a lot of sacrifices. She does a lot of extra things to make sure that I have the tools that I need to succeed, not only in the present, but in the future. And the funny thing is, Christian, I could write a book on how intelligent and how beautiful my mom is. And it's so amazing that I have someone like her to be in my life and support me throughout all of my endeavors. And I want to thank all the young people that are watching. I want all the young people that are watching, every single one of you, go to your parents. Thank your parents for everything they've done for you. Because you wouldn't be where you are. You wouldn't be watching this show or watching one of the live streams if it weren't for your parents nurturing you and taking care of you and bringing you along the way. And there are so many children in this world that do not have two parents.
Yes, and it's a blessing for me and you just to be so So blessed to have those. I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Have those the things that are good about having those people in your life that can help you throughout your journey, and it's great.
Having that support to back you up
Yes.
throughout everything that you do. And I'm glad to have that, and I know that you have that with your parents, Christian, and that's such a blessing to have that. So what we're going to do is actually, we are going to, and Christian, because we're about to have a guest come on, but we want to take a break. So just tell the viewers about what we're going to do after the commercial break.
We're going to be having a very special guest, someone that you might know, and she just came into the school system, and so our phone lines will be open, and just make sure to tune in on right after the commercial break.
So basically, the thing about this guest, and before we go to commercial break, I actually want to talk about the guest. The guest is it's such a profound experience and profound opportunity to have someone like this that's coming on the show. Because what really matters in the community, and the main thing that we're trying to achieve with young people, with adults, with trying to educate parents and children, we're trying to educate them that education is the key. Because without education, we wouldn't have intelligent young men like you.
Yes.
We wouldn't have people, children and adults that have grown up to be such profound figures in our society. Without education, without the bottom level of that education and rising to the top of your career, without that knowledge, without that power inside of your brain, without that knowingness inside of your heart, we wouldn't have such amazing figures that we have, that we can say that we are proud of today. We would not have the opportunity to say intelligent things and know what we're talking about.
Yes, and if we didn't have those intelligent people, then there's a lot of things that we wouldn't have. Like to go from Thomas Edison creating the light bulb to the people how it evolved from a big old, it looked like a brick, a phone that you put to your hand, to now where you can have an iPhone and you can FaceTime people and you can see them from the screen. It's phenomenal how it's just everything has evolved, and it wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have had those people go to college, those people go through the things that they had to go through to invent those things for our better good.
And we don't say this just to say it, because what all of this means to our guests, basically what I'm trying to say is that when I say education is the key, this guest is really the key to especially the local school system. And really we're trying to show you by having this guest that to really get to know the people that are in the positions that matter as far as education, as far as what your children are learning inside of the schools as well. So basically what we're trying to do is, by having this very, very special guest, and what the point of this guest is to not only teach and show and really reveal who this person is as not only a person, but as how important education is to her. But we're also trying to show what she is going to do to help try and further my education, because we're both students in Henrico County as well. So what she's going to try and do to further my education, to further your education, to further our peers' education, to further the education of the thousands of students that attend a Henrico County public school.
And it's awesome how we get to have those. It's great how we get to have those people on our show, like us two young men and still in school. We get to see these big time people, and I don't want to say big time, but they're local people that a lot of people know about.
Like local celebrities.
Yes, and they could change our lives. They could, like this person, she's a part of the HCPS. She could, like me and you were in Henrico, she could change our schools. Something maybe that we would like to change, or that we would not very much like.
And while we're building up this guest so much, while we're probably causing a lot of suspense for this guest, we're trying to really encourage you to stay tuned in to the show, because it's important that you hear from this very, very special person who I'm very excited to be hearing from.
So make sure that you come back after commercial break and to see this guest that we've been pumping up. So make sure to tune in.
And after we come back, what we're going to do is we're not only going to be interviewing the guest, but our phone lines are going to be open. So we will be right back.
As the superintendent of the Henrico County Public Schools, according to the best of your ability, so help you God. I do. Can you please sign me? Welcome to the microphone. Thank you so very much for that very warm welcome. It is an honor to have been selected to serve the Henrico County community as superintendent of schools. I absolutely have big shoes to fill, left by Dr. Ken Law, who has absolutely made his mark on Henrico County Public Schools and left an outstanding organization. Please know that I will be committed to maintaining the excellent reputation within Henrico schools and working collaboratively with the community to continue that excellence. It's clear that you're committed to working as a team to make sure that the students of Henrico have the best opportunities possible within the schools, and I'll be committed to doing the same. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Speak what you believe. Speak the word. Speak it. It's gotta come to pass. Go, go, go. Speak it. Speak it. You gotta speak it with your mouth. Want it to conquer and overcome us. Yes, I'm a winner. You gotta speak it. Your victory is in your mouth.
And welcome back. We are on Youthful Voices, and we have a very, very special guest. This is Dr. Amy Cashwell, the new Henrico County Public School Superintendent. It's good to see you, Mrs. Cashwell. Thank you for coming.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, really, what we want to talk about, we want to get to know you personally as who you are and where you've come from, and what values that have been instilled in you as a person, and how you're going to utilize those values and try to incorporate it into what your position is as a superintendent. So I'll go ahead and ask you my first question. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from.
All right. Well, I have a unique childhood in that my father was in the military, so we moved around all over the place. I went to elementary school, some in Virginia early on, then I was in Hawaii, and then I spent some time in New York City before I wound up in Virginia again. And so one thing that I think has helped shape who I've become as an adult and part of my passion for education was the fact that I saw lots of different schools. I know a lot about what works well in schools and what doesn't. You know, sometimes when you transition from one grade to another, there are challenges, but imagine kind of going from state to state and school system to school system. So I encountered some challenges along the way, but one thing that I know from all of my experiences is that many of the successes I had or the way I was able to have opportunities and reach my potential was because of amazing teachers. And so I share often with people the story of my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Dimson, in New York City in Public School 26 and PS 26. And I had a really rocky transition going from Hawaii public schools to New York City public schools. And so, can you imagine the geography alone was something totally different. Weather conditions and climate conditions, you know, everything was different. Living conditions were different. But I really struggled for a number of reasons. Had some family challenges and some household changes, went from a 2-parent household to a single-parent household. And these are, you know, every student brings their own unique experiences in life into the classroom. And so I had a rocky year, but Mrs. Dimson made sure that I knew that I was cared about.
And that's a great teacher.
Yeah, and
Great
that she was going to help me not only learn long division, but learn how to have confidence in myself as a student. And so that experience carried me on through high school and often to college. I was passionate about education ever since my experience with Mrs. Dimson, and when I was thinking about what I might want to do in life, I thought I might want to be a teacher and hopefully have the same impact. And so that's exactly what I did. I went to school to become a teacher, and I was really proud when I got to teach 4th grade. That was my dream job, and I wrote Mrs. Dimson a letter to tell her how proud I was to have that experience and that I hoped I could be even half the teacher she was. So that got me into education and tells you a little bit about my childhood. So
that's awesome. And before we continue, I want to mention that there is a call-in number on the screen. So if you do have a question for Dr. Cashwell or either me or Christian, you can call into this phone line and we will answer your question. So let's continue with the interview of Dr. Cashwell.
So continuing on with the school system, how did you come upon, or how did you get the position as superintendent?
Well, that's a great question. So I was serving most recently before I came here as what was called the Chief Academic Officer in Virginia Beach City Public Schools, where I mentioned I started out as a teacher. I had been a principal there, and then worked in their central office on curriculum. So during my time in Virginia Beach in the central office, and that's a pretty big school system, just shy of 70,000 students, I worked very closely with the superintendent there. And so I got a really up-close look at the job of the superintendent, and it really piqued my interest. And I thought, you know, I got into education wanting to impact a group of students at the classroom level, but I realized that in different positions you can impact a system more broadly.
Yes, and that's awesome.
So that piqued my interest, and I saw the job and I applied and went through a long interview process and was really honored and humbled to be selected to be superintendent in Henrico County.
That's phenomenal.
That's awesome, and thank you for, because you sound like your background it sounds amazing for you to be the Henrico County superintendent. I'm so honored to have you as the superintendent of the county that I live in.
It's my pleasure.
So, now delving into the job itself, what are you planning to do differently, like as a superintendent than past superintendents have done? What are your main goals that you want to achieve?
Well, I can't speak to whether it's different than what other superintendents have done, but one of the main goals I have is to really remain connected to students. And so that's why I was honored and excited to have this opportunity. I think your show is titled Youthful Voices.
Yes, ma'am.
And one thing that's important to me and that matters to me is student voice. So in everything that we do as a school system, I want to make sure that we're honoring student voice and that we really have a deep understanding of what the issues are that students are facing in our classrooms and in the world, and so that we're preparing them to be life ready for whatever they encounter after they leave Henrico County Public Schools. So I've done a lot of visiting in schools already. We've only been underway a few weeks, but I've been into probably almost 15 schools over the past few weeks. Spent the first day of school at Wilder Middle and some other schools greeting students, getting to talk to families. Have spent the summer before school started having some meet and greets, really just informal opportunities to shake hands with community members at the libraries all across Henrico. And I've had a couple town hall meetings, and so a lot of listening. That's what I plan to do, a good bit of listening, and that'll help me make informed decisions when I go forward. So because I feel like I have a good understanding of what matters to the community and most importantly to the students.
Okay, and that's awesome.
And so I have another question. Can you tell me, Elijah, and all the viewers, can you tell us some of the different responsibilities that you have for this, with this big position?
Well, one of the biggest responsibilities and the one that I hold at the top of my priority list is student safety and well-being. So I know that, yes, I want you to learn, and I want to make sure every student who comes through the doors in Henrico County Schools has an excellent education. And so I am responsible for making sure that we're providing that. First and foremost, I want you safe and cared for, because when students know that they're safe and cared for, they're able to learn. And of course, that is our ultimate responsibility. So that's certainly one duty, is making sure that the physical structures, our buildings, are safe and set up for learning. Right? And then that you feel socially and emotionally supported, and those kinds of safety nets. So whether it's through our school counseling programs or other things that we offer, that students feel they have the support they need to succeed. So.
Okay, and that's a great answer. Now, I want to ask, because sometimes there are times in the past where a lot of parents feel like their children are being overshadowed because maybe they're children of color, maybe they're children with disabilities. Yeah. So how are you going to work with parents as well to make sure that they don't, that you're not making the children feel like they're overshadowed and not making the parents feel like their children are overshadowed as well?
That's an excellent question. And I know that, it's easy to say that your goal is to serve all students and make sure all students have meaningful, wonderful experiences. But sometimes there are obstacles and challenges that get in the way. And while I believe that most all school staff have the best interest of every student in mind, I know that there are realities when challenges arise. And so hearing from parents about what are the challenges, what's happening in schools that are making you feel that your child is overshadowed, that's what I would ask a parent. And then of course hearing from students themselves about what it is that they think is getting in the way of having a positive experience in schools. So we want to make sure, and I know it's important for me, first and foremost, I said it's about that safety and well-being. It's that emotional piece too. Students need to know they're cared for when they're in school and that they matter. Every student matters. So if there's something they bring to the table that's a learning challenge or any other obstacle, behavioral challenges, that we're there to work with them, partner with families to help them overcome those challenges and to make sure they, as I said, students matter. Each and every student matters, and I would hope that we're not doing anything as a system to make it seem that any one student is less valuable than another.
Yes. And so can you tell the viewers and me and Elijah about what do you enjoy as being the superintendent?
Oh, there's so much I enjoy. And of course, it's new to me. This is the first time I've been a superintendent. So while I've worked in public education for 21 years, this is my first time in this role. So it's been a joy and a pleasure. While there are lots of challenges that have come my way, most of the things I've enjoyed the most are being in school. So whether I'm joining a class of kindergartners who are in school for the very first time, I've been on the carpet enjoying stories with them, to visiting students who are high school schoolers are talking about what their next steps are as they're preparing to go into college or the workforce or into some sort of interesting industry. I love hearing from students and visiting with them. I was not long ago at Varina High School where they have a TV studio set up because there's a specialty program there that's around media services. So I saw some high schoolers working to produce a show similar to what you all are doing here, and they were sharing their goals and aspirations with me. So I love, the thing I love the most, and that's the most fun for me, is any chance that I can interact with students. It's a whole lot of fun.
That is amazing. Thank you. So I want to ask, so because there are a lot of situations where there are children with disabilities and there are a lot of situations where they're harassed, whether it be by some of the teachers, some of the, like a school resource officer, an administrator. Sometimes they're harassed and not given the proper treatment on what they deserve as children, not only just children with disabilities, but as children. Yeah. So what are you planning to do to make sure that these situations are handled better and to make sure that children with disabilities are not harassed and thrown around to that degree?
Well, I would hope the message is loud and clear to all staff members and community members in Henrico County Schools that I expect every child to be treated with respect the way I would want my own children treated. So I have 2 children in the school system, and whether I did or did not, but I want for them the same thing I want for you and anyone else who walks into Henrico County Public Schools, and that is to be treated with the utmost care and respect. So whether it's someone coming into our schools, you mentioned like a school resource officer, someone who's not necessarily employed by the school, so whether it's law enforcement partners coming in, any other partners coming in, or our own school staff, that the message I plan to send and continue to send is that we do right by every student and we put their well-being first above all else. And that, we take the time when things may get tense or difficult to pause, reflect, and act with the utmost professionalism for our students. That's a really great question. I would hope those kinds of things haven't happened, but I'm guessing you're drawing upon some previous experience.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's a real issue and something that deserves my attention. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a very thoughtful question.
Yes, ma'am. And before a question I saw that you had a question, I just wanted to ask a quick question. You say you have 2 children.
I do.
And what are their names?
Elizabeth and Catherine.
And how old are they?
14 and 9. So I have one in high school, freshman in high school. She's just started at Tucker High School. And then I have a young daughter who's in 4th grade, and she's at Glen Allen Elementary School. So I get to see a parent perspective of how things are running in the schools too. Mm-hmm. So from the mass of papers that came home to fill out the first day, to trying to navigate Power School and find out bus routes, oh my gosh, it's a lot. And so, and I get to hear from students too, so it helps me know how we might be able to streamline things for parents and for students, because I'm experiencing it brand new for the very first time through the eyes of my children, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you experience as a superintendent from your everyday life?
That I experience in my everyday life?
Yes. So
do you mean like when I'm going to the grocery store or out and about, or when I'm at work? I want to make sure I'm understanding your question.
What are some of the things that like I heard when you were just talking about like you have children?
Yes.
And that kind of covers my question. Talking about when you have children, you're experiencing it as a parent.
Yes.
And you're seeing it going on through you being a superintendent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point, is, bringing the lens of an everyday person into the job, not just, the lens of some central office administrator who's stuffy sitting behind a desk, what people might imagine, what happens in a superintendent's office. But a lot of my work is outside the office, and so, I get to hear from community members when I am in the grocery store. I can tell you every time I've been in Kroger or Publix, someone has recognized me and come up, but whether they're a citizen in the community, a student, a teacher, they've shared their experiences. Of course, I get to be a parent, going to parent events and helping my kids with homework and everything else. So, and of course I've been a student too, and I try not to forget what that was like. So,
yeah.
I definitely try to bring that into the job.
And that's amazing, because the thing about being a superintendent is anyone can be a central kind of office person and just come into the job, but to have the perspective of someone who's been a teacher, someone who's been a parent, someone who's been in those fields and seen it for themselves, it's kind of hard to beat the experience that you've had in the past. So it's awesome that we have someone like you that is working on the job. So I want to ask you, because, and I also want to mention, because this is the first time a lot of children in Henrico County, a lot of parents are actually seeing you, because a lot of people haven't seen you before. So this is a great opportunity to show you and show what you're about as a person, and how you're going to create that better change for our children. But I'm not sure if you know this or not, and I've known this, but Virginia is actually the #1 state with the most children that are subjected to the school to prison pipeline. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these children end up actually being children of color, because, and one thing about Henrico has known to be a big area where a lot of children are subjected and implemented into the school to prison pipeline. So is there a way that you, as a superintendent in charge of the county, how are you going to change that and create better settings for Black and brown children to thrive?
Yeah, I am aware of that research and the data around that, particularly in Virginia as a state, and then I've looked at the data for Henrico as well, and trying to make sure that as I'm coming in, I've looked at the data and say, when we look at discipline data and we look at the rates of suspension or other discipline punishments, are they equally distributed across all of our student groups, or is there disproportionality? Is there a gap? And so what I can see when I'm looking at the data is there is a gap. And so you mentioned the gap that, if you're a Black or brown student, you might be twice as likely during a discipline infraction to be assigned suspension out of school than maybe another sort of a punishment, if you will. And so that's something I'm really digging deeply into, getting to know the data and looking and examining exactly where the disparities are. But I definitely have seen that. It has come to my attention. And so one thing I've been doing early on is trying to examine what kinds of professional development or teacher education and administrator education are we using with the folks who are interacting with students, and then deciding whether or not it is a discipline infraction and what happens once the student might be in the office, and that they're well equipped to understand what supports are available other than just doling out a suspension or doling out a punishment that may not have any impact in changing a behavior if there was a behavior that needed to be corrected. So, and making sure that we're doing things that are responsive and not just reactive with students. So
that's a real, and I just want to say that's one of because I don't know if you know, but I'm actually a motivational speaker.
Wonderful.
As well. And reacting and responding is one of the biggest things I talk about with almost anyone. Yeah. If I do a speech on bullying, I always talk about reacting versus responding, because reacting usually ends up being negative, but responding is something that can create positive changes and have a positive outcome. So I'm so glad to hear that from the mouth of the person that's in charge of the education of Henrico County.
You're right to know that, because I think sometimes we forget, and adults can forget, that if you live in that reactive mode, you can't be as productive. And so I think, yes, it's identifying that we want to be responsive, but then helping teachers and administrators know what does that look like. Maybe they don't feel like they have the right tools and strategies in their toolbox, so that they are providing the right kinds of responses appropriately and in a timely fashion before things get to a point of no return, or to a point where we could be really negatively impacting a student's future. Because it's one thing when these instances happen 1, 2, 3 times in school, but it's that pattern. You mentioned the school to prison pipeline, or things that can have long-term effects. So we have to understand that the way we're handling things early on with students does have an impact on their future, and that it's our responsibility to make sure we're well equipped to do the right things in a timely manner and in a proactive way for students.
Yes, and like Elijah said with the responding, my dad always talks to me about not just responding in a action way, like if you're going to say something, like if something just happened and somebody's interviewing you, like if you're in school and they're trying to figure out what happened. My dad always says, think before you speak. And it's great because you might just say something out of your mouth and it might end you up in prison, and it can end you there for the rest of your life. And also with actions, it can also end you up in prison. And so, like Elijah said, it's just great, and it's important to always think about responding and thinking before you speak.
Those are wise words. Your father's a wise man. He's taught you well. Yeah.
Well, so another question for you. So, of course, bullying is a very, very, very big issue. Of course, not just in Henrico County, but all around the nation. But in Henrico County specifically, because you are the superintendent, there are, of course, you can't handle every situation, and I understand that. But how are you planning to try to deter bullying in the county? And before you answer the question, I want to also speak on, because of course there's a lot of bullying between student to student, but as I have experienced previously in the past, bullying can also come from adults as well, like teachers, administrators, school resource officers. So how are you going to deter not only bullying between students, but bullying between adults to students?
Well, that's a really great question. And I don't know that I have one answer or there's one way to solve the problem, but something I'm definitely tuned into. I'd say that from my perspective, one immediate need would be to find ways to keep building a culture of mutual respect in our schools. And when we talk about mutual respect, that does go student to student and staff to student and so on. So maybe continue to find ways to build on that culture of respect and make sure we elevate the topic and model what we expect and model what a culture of positive interactions looks like for students and for staff members. I think it'll be interesting for me during my first few months to continue to get to the root cause of some of the bullying and find out what kind of bullying is most prevalent. Is it things that are happening like cyberbullying? Is it interactions that are happening that during the adult supervised day in school? Is it something that's happening behind the scenes? And so I think once I know more about where there might be trends of bullying occurring, I can do more to solve those specific problems. But I think more broadly it would be, how can I foster a culture of respect, of mutual respect? And I'll be looking for students. I'd be curious to know what you all see as some immediate solutions to bullying, and what you might see as some proactive solutions.
And yeah, because there are a lot of types of bullying as well. There's, of course, there's physical bullying, but there's also verbal abuse, there's psychological abuse, emotional abuse. So all these types of bullying, and since there are so many cyberbullying, and since there are so many types of abuse and bullying, it's kind of hard to try to maintain all of them, but maybe you could figure out a way to try and get them all in like a situation where you can observe them all at once and observe them to see which kind of bullying is more prevalent and how to create solutions to stop them. And you could very well ask students, and I bet a lot of students can come up with immediate solutions to help with some of these problems, because bullying is a very prevalent issue and it's not like it's going away anytime soon.
And I think your point to, maybe even if we can't stop everything from happening, as much as we'd want to set up an environment where bullying is less likely to happen, an important question for me would be, do students feel supported when bullying happens? So for things that we can't prevent, and no matter how hard we try, do we have the right systems in place so that if a student is being bullied in any of the ways you mentioned, is there the right pathway or avenue to get help from a trusted adult? So I'll be interested in learning more about that too from a student perspective. Not only how do we prevent it from happening, but in the instances when it does happen, what can we do to make sure there's a good system of supports in place so students get the help that they need?
Yes, and so I have what can you tell us about some of the different people that help you out as you being the superintendent, and how some of the people that help you to succeed in your position?
Oh, there's a team of people. Team Henrico. It's pretty impressive, I will tell you that. And one of the great joys, besides getting to meet the students and the community members, is sort of looking behind the curtain in Henrico schools at what makes our school division great. And so whether it's the folks driving the buses and figuring out the routes and transportation, that's immediately what I think of the helpers who make work possible in a school division. This size are the folks in transportation, the folks who are making sure that our buildings are open and ready and clean, and that things are in working order, all the repairs. We have buildings that are really old, as you're aware, and you both mentioned Tucker and Highland Springs, so those are some of the older high schools, all the way to our more brand new facilities, and making sure AC is running. So they're, just from the mechanical and transportation aspect. So there's an assistant superintendent who assists me, who oversees a lot of that physical, structural kind of thing. Then there's an assistant superintendent who helps with everything that's instructional, teaching, and learning related that happens in the classroom, and a whole team of folks. So if you think about any organization and the teams of people that make the work possible and make success possible, you know that it's never one person doing it alone. So I think this is a great opportunity for me to brag about the amazing team I work with. It's called the Superintendent's Leadership Team, or Division Leadership Team, and it's a dynamic group of individuals. So we have a department that focuses on equity and opportunity, and then we have one that's teaching and learning, somebody who handles finance. Can you imagine trying to balance the finances for a giant system? I surely couldn't do it alone. And we're getting ready to prepare our budget to make sure that we have the right personnel items in place to pay our employees, and the supports in place to make sure you have the books that you need and lunches are ordered. And so it's a tremendous team, thinking about every facet, to the things that you experience up close and personal every day, to the things you never see or think about in the school systems.
Wow,
so,
that's awesome.
It's a pretty amazing team.
Now, I want to ask you, because I remember one of the main things that you said when you came in to this position was, you don't want there to be like an East End and a West End.
That's right.
We're in Henrico County.
That's right.
So I want to ask this question because even though we are as one Henrico County, there's obvious signs that there are, like for instance, there's a lot more income flowing in, a lot of people in the West End that receive more income than maybe some people in the East End, and because of that, a lot of more funding goes into the West End than the East End. So sometimes the East End schools don't receive some of the supplies and the tools that the West End schools receive. So is there any way that you're working on trying to decrease that unlikeliness to succeed?
Yes. And so, in every one of the meetings I had across there are 5 magisterial districts in Henrico, believe it or not, 5 of them that make up this one Henrico. And so I've been in every one. So magisterial districts on the east end of the county and the west end of the county, and issues of equity have come up at every single meeting. And it's not just about creating cultural equity, racial equity, but this idea of our facilities actually equitable. Is the funding equitable for students from one side of the county to the next? And so I've been kind of peeling back the layers of the onion, if you will, and looking deeply to see, what is it that we're doing that's creating this inequity from place to place? Is it something we're intentionally doing? Is it happening over time inadvertently? And how do we go about creating an equitable environment for all of our schools? So, I think that there are some challenges in that we know just like every student has individual unique needs that won't be like the student sitting beside him or her in class, and so what the teacher delivers for instructional methods might look different. We want every school to have the freedom to operate a little differently so that they're meeting their student needs. So if they need more of something, they get it. If they need less of something, they might not have that. But that what we ought to do as a school division and what we could do better at is identifying what are the core essentials we want every student to have in every school, no matter where it is in the county. What is it that is our core instructional program that we believe every student ought to have access to? And so it doesn't matter if you're in a school where your PTA can fundraise for all this extra technology. If we believe that technology is necessary for students to be able to learn, then we should be providing that to all schools. So I think there are probably lots of layers of inequities to uncover and really begin to think about how we can bring some parity across the division. And there's a lot of work to be done in that arena. Some of it has to do with physical spaces. So we were excited, as I said, to announce just last week that we will build a new Tucker High School. We will build a new Highland Springs High School. And so while I don't want to get stuck in this east-west, everything's east-west, there is a reality that we've got some gaps to close and we've got to restore some equity. And so we hope that this is a first step in showing that all areas of the county, no matter, we are one Henrico, deserve to have the best facilities for students, the best programs for students. My hope is that, at some point we will think of ourselves as one Henrico, and when people talk about the East and the West, it's because they're referring to geography and not the way that we're providing services to students.
And yeah, because I found out, because I've gone through Henrico County almost my entire life. Actually, yes, my entire life. And the thing is, with each school and each, whether it be elementary, middle, or high, each school is like its own little district in a bigger city.
Yes.
And like it's its own little district in that bigger city. And when it comes to that, it's kind of like it operates on its own, but we do have to make a gap to bridge, not a gap, but to bridge the gap to bring all of these schools together as one Henrico County. So I'm glad that you are taking this job as seriously as you are and trying to bridge that gap and trying to eliminate the East End and the West End as far as when you're talking about services that are being provided and needs that may or may not be serviced. So I'm glad that you are working diligently to try and make sure that you are, you as a superintendent, are making sure that every child succeeds.
That's right. Every school, no matter where you are in the county, whether you're in first grade or 12th grade, in the East End or the West End, there ought to be core things we believe all students need and should have, and we need to do better at providing them to all. It's a great question.
I want to ask, we know that you're a doctor and you're an alumna of Longwood University.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your journey of going through Longwood and how you got to be a doctor? And
I love that question because being an educator, I love school. I do. In fact, so I was in school, it seems like forever, and I would love to go back to school even because I love to learn. I think of myself as a lifelong learner. I chose Longwood, it was Longwood College at the time, because they had a great teacher education program, and so when I was finishing high school.
And excuse me, I just want to say, I know a lot of teachers that have gone to Longwood University.
It's popular for that reason. They still have a great reputation for that, even though it was many moons ago when I was there. So I chose the school for that reason. My counselors pointed me in the direction and said, if you want to be a teacher, because I started saying, I want to be a teacher, and thinking of Mrs. Dimson in that 4th grade classroom, and so that's the path I took. So I went to Longwood College, and then I graduated with a liberal studies and a degree in elementary education and through 8th grade. It's a middle school education. And so I went out into the workforce right out of my 4 years in college and got a job teaching 2nd grade, then eventually 4th grade, which is what I really was excited about that. But while I was teaching, I knew I wanted to pursue another degree, an advanced degree, probably a master's degree. And so a lot of other teachers told me I became a specialist in reading or special ed, so I thought maybe I ought to pick up a specialty. So I decided to learn about administration, and so I went to the George Washington University night school, basically, while I was a teacher for a number of years, to get a specialized degree in administration and learn how to serve as an administrator and sort of that behind the scenes I told you about in running a school system, and then eventually pursued my doctorate degree. So enjoy in policy studies and education. So
wow, that is amazing. You've come a long way since that fourth grade class.
That's
and
right.
And to be honest with you, I have my own Mrs. Dempson, to be really honest with you, because my second and third grade teacher, Mrs. Amy Wells, she was the best teacher I've ever had, because she cared that she wanted me to succeed. Even if I went through some troubles, she would help me through it. She was in constant contact with my mom. My mom and her were on the same page all the time. Because they were in such good contact, my mom would know about stuff that before I would. So she was really trying to make sure that I succeed, because she cared about me just as much as she cared about every other student that was in that classroom. Yeah. So Mrs. Wells, I guess you could say, is my Mrs. Dempson.
That's right. I think, and so many of us have those stories. That speaks to the power of education and the power of putting students first.
Yes, and I have a Mrs. Dempson too.
I love it.
My third grade teacher, Miss Dunham, like Elijah said, my mom knew things before I even knew about it, and it was she was a very interactive teacher. She did a lot of things with us, and it was one of my favorite teachers, and I think that she was a very unique and a fun teacher. She did this thing called brownie points, and so each time, like if we had a special, we got a good report, if we got a hallway compliment, she would add a brownie. And so she cared about us so much. Once we had a little magnetic pan. Once we filled up the whole pan, she on Friday she would make brownies, bring them to us, and after school we would get to eat our brownies. And so I have another question for you. Since you say that you go around to a lot of schools, do you I'm on the football team for Elko Middle School, and we have a game tomorrow. So I want to ask, do you plan, or do you plan on going to like activities after school, basketball games, football games, baseball, soccer?
I do. Well, first of all, congratulations for being on the football team, and good luck to you. Yes, I've been to a number of football games already, several. I was at the opening game of football season a few weeks ago. We were actually at Hermitage. It was a Hermitage Highland Springs game.
Oh, I heard about that.
Did you hear about it? Wow, Highland Springs is amazing, and I kind of felt for Hermitage there for a little while, but I think they're going to rally. They have the rest of the season ahead of them. But yes, I've been to several football games, plan to see a number of events, whether it's drama productions that schools are putting on, and I wish I could be at all of them, but it gets hard. But I'm excited that students reach out and invite me, or that if I see something advertised, I try to find my way and see what's happening after school, because those are equally as important to me, those experiences, as the academic things.
And that's awesome. And I want to, in speaking of after school activities, and I know a lot of times it's a situation of funding being a little rough sometimes, but there are a lot of opportunities in this county that have been like severed as far as after school activities, whether it be something with art, whether it be something with in theater. A lot of the art after school art programs have been severed. So what are you planning to do to try to not only implement some of these programs maybe back into some of the schools, but to try to implement newer programs so that children with different interests have somewhere to vet their skills and really put their skill?
That's a great question. Well, I think that the extracurricular programs are as important as the academic programs when we're building the whole child. So I'd want to know more about what programs were cut with the arts, because I'm a huge proponent. Some kids, their passion lies in music or theater or whatever it might be. And so that might be the only reason they're getting up to come to school every day. And so I want to make sure that we're not missing out on opportunities to help kids find their passions, if they haven't found them yet, or if they have that passion that we're helping fuel that. So I want to know what's missing that we might want to add back. And I love the part of your question about looking to things that we might not be doing already, because when I think about things like cybersecurity and coding and
Yes.
a lot of the computer sciences, that's an art form, in some ways an extracurricular activity that a lot of kids are engaged in on the side and could have a really positive impact on their futures. So bringing in those kinds of clubs to schools or providing the resources so that those clubs can exist, whether it's coding clubs, computer science clubs, things that aren't your traditional clubs that people might think of,
or
with
even
art or music or sports.
Or even bring them into actual classes as well.
Even better. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I like the way you think. That's a great idea. How can we infuse those things into the school day? So, I hope that I can learn more about where the gaps are if needs aren't being met. So if students are saying, gosh, this club used to exist or this program and it's really a loss that we feel, then I would want to know what it is to prioritize funding.
Wow, that's such an awesome thing, because I'm glad that we have someone who's in charge of the school system who cares about the arts, because the arts are so important to students, because some students are still trying to find their passion, and maybe they do have a passion in some form of art, whether it be theater arts, whether it be drawing or painting, whatever it may be. And I'm so glad we have someone like you who cares about trying to encourage students to find their passion in different clubs, different programs, and infusing their interest into programs that may not already exist, or bringing back programs that used to exist but were cut. So I'm glad we have someone like you who cares about the students and what they feel like they need.
I absolutely care. Yeah, that's why I'm in this business.
Yes, ma'am.
For the students, so.
Yes, ma'am.
And another thing that I'm doing in school, I just started in band, and I'm in beginning band, and I feel like it's a great experience just and to see some of those kids. They're so excited to be in there. We just started with our instruments. We started Monday, and it was fun just seeing everyone get ready with their instruments, seeing it all come together, and like you were saying, it's bringing back some of the after school activities, and like Elijah said, bringing some of them into the school day. That's one of the things that motivate me and makes school even more funner than it is to go to school. And like you had said, some of the kids, they just want to go to school like to play football, and it wouldn't be the best thing if they would take those things out. And so, it's a great thing, and I think that we need to bring those clubs and things back into the school system.
So, Miss Dr. Cashwell, I can't express really into as a feeling and into words how much of an honor it has been to have you on this show, because it's so important to not only show parents, to show young people who you are as a person, but to show people that you care about the students in Henrico County, and you want to work with them, and you want to encourage them to succeed. And that's such an awesome thing, and I'm so glad that I have had the opportunity to talk with you as well. And again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this fabulous show you have as an outlet for students.
So what we're going to do is we're ending our show. Make sure you tune in next week, because I'm going to be giving my speech next week. So make sure you tune in to Youthful Voices.
It's time to speak. Begin to speak. Speak what you believe. Speak the word. Speak it, and it's gotta come to pass. Go!